About that. I don't know what happened with our connection, and my phone lost the connection, and they told me that they couldn't get it started again. So here we are. We'll try this once again this morning, this very chilly Friday morning. And as always, hope you're doing well. And this week we have focused all of our devotions on the thought of control. Now, the request came to me without specifics. It just said, can you teach on control? And so, I've done my best to cover some areas, especially applicable areas for you and I on a daily basis about control. And we're going to finish that up today. I know many times, I try to look at a hymn on Friday afternoon or Friday morning, but this morning, one last scripture I want to give you this morning and leave you with on this thought. And many people think when they think of control and they think of letting go and they think of allowing the Father to do His will, they're reminded of Christ in the garden. And if you'll remember, Christ went to the garden. He prayed 3 times, and every time he prayed, he prayed, Lord or Father, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but Thy will be done. And this is the prime example of us understanding that, we need to allow the Lord to lead us in every situation. And I don't want to make that passage, so familiar that it loses its impact. And, there were greater things going on there, and we're going to look at that in the month of April around Easter. And so I'm not going to use that, but this morning from the book of Acts chapter 27, probably one of my favorite longer passages to preach on and to teach on. Paul, I'm going to give you a very brief snapshot of what was happening in chapters 26, 27. So Paul had appeared before a high council about what he was preaching, and he was preaching Christ, and they were trying to find every way in the world to get him locked up and to get him put under the jail, and so they couldn't. He appealed, and finally he appealed to Caesar, and he said, "Listen, I want to go to Rome, and I want to talk to the big guy." And what was interesting about that is Paul was more worried about delivering the gospel to everybody, and not just getting into a different city. And so, as they put him on a boat in chapter 27, there's an explanation of how they sailed geographically, and as you're reading through 27, you come across some wording, if you will, and he told them, he said, "Listen." In verse 10, he said, and he said unto them, "Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the landing of the ship, but also of our lives." And the scripture said that nevertheless, the centurion believed the master, the owner of the ship, more than those things which were spoken by Paul. So Paul was warning them. Paul said, "Hey, listen, if we keep sailing this way, the ship's going to be hurt. People's lives are going to be hurt. This is not good. We need to stop." And this is you and I in many situations in life. We look at somebody and we say, if you continue down this road, you're not only going to hurt you, but you're going to hurt the people around you. You're going to affect the people around you. The other morning we looked at Daniel, and what Daniel did really only affected him when he was put in the lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we didn't look at them this week, but it really only affected them when they were put in the fiery furnace. Most of the time in Scripture, it only affected them. Well, Paul said here, he said, you're not just messing up in your life, but you're going to mess up my life and everybody else's life on this boat if you keep sailing this direction. And how frustrating is that for us to look at people and to say, just quit going this way because you're going to affect us negatively. And so this is what happens. And so if you're familiar with Acts 27, then you understand how this whole thing goes. But they sailed along, and there arose Euroclydon, and this big storm arose, and the ship was tossed, and all throughout the chapter. Now this was an actual event that happened, but all throughout the chapter we see things that are applicable to our life. as the ship was tossed, they had to lighten the ship. They started throwing out things that they needed, and the tackling and other things, everything that could be spared was thrown overboard. That's recorded in the scripture. And they ran aground, and they had to use helps. They had to strengthen the hull of the ship, and they threw off the tackling. And then they said at one point it's recorded, that neither sun nor stars were showing, and that was their guidance system. That's how they navigated the seas. So you understand what I'm saying is that oftentimes we tell people, if you keep down this road, you're not just going to affect you, you're going to affect me as well. And it's very frustrating. I think all of us have been there. And whether it's with a child or a family member, maybe even a parent, maybe a cousin, or maybe just a dear lifelong friend. And we say, if you continue to do this, you're not only going to make a shipwreck of your life, but you're going to make a shipwreck of our life too. And they continued on. And so I can fast forward, and I can get all the way to the end of this chapter. Now, things just got worse for them. And finally, the ship was tossed so much that it was broken up. And the very last of the chapter says, it says that the centurion who was captaining the ship or sailing the ship, the ship had fallen into a place where the seas came together, and it broke it apart. And so they began to jump off, and they would swim to escape. And verse 44 of 27 says, and the rest, talking about all the other people, it says, and the rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship. And so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. Now, this morning I gave you a title because oftentimes we just want to take, and we want to take a situation like this, and we want to get in somebody's face, and we want to say, I told you, our family wouldn't be in this situation if you would have listened to me, or if our friendship or our church or any situation, whatever it might be, our company, whatever it might be, we might say that. And we might just want to beat them over the head saying, all this is your fault. But if you go back and read in 27, Paul said, listen, in verse 24, he said, saying, fear not. He said, I've got to go before Caesar. And he said, I perceive that no one's going to lose their life in this thing. And I don't have time to read you the whole chapter. And I'm trying to give you this snapshot this morning that as things went on and things got worse, instead of Paul just beating them into the ground and grinding them away, telling them how awful they were, he finally looked at them and said, this is going to get really bad, but God's going to see us through. And maybe your family, your workplace, your church, maybe your close friends, and you are in situations today because they chose not to listen to the Lord. They chose not to follow some insights that God had given. And you would do better today to remind them that God is gracious and full of mercy. And there is punishment for sin. There are consequences for our actions. But there's also restoration. There's also safety. And at the end of this chapter, we find, as Paul told them in the middle of the chapter, he said, listen, we're all gonna get to land. It's not gonna be easy. It's not gonna feel good. And you're not gonna like how we're gonna get there, but we're all gonna get there. And so as we conclude this week, and as we wrap up this series of devotions on control, I want to help you with this, because if you're watching this, then it's more likely than not that you are a person that's sitting in a place that you want to control every situation in your life and in your church and in your workplace and others. And maybe you have somebody in your life that's distant from the Lord, or maybe you have situations that are going on that you've tried to warn people about. Well, you're going to stand at a great opportunity to encourage them. You're going to stand at a great opportunity to look at them and be honest and say, this is going to hurt. And we're going to go through a tough time. And it's going to be a bad storm. But look, God promised us His grace, His peace, His presence. And it might look like verse 44 and the rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship. And so it came to pass that all escaped to land. And it's time for us. You might not be able to control every situation, but you can be an encourager in those situations. And someone's going to need these folks in our lives that we try to, we're trying to help, we're trying to steer. They're going to need you. They're going to need you. And they're going to need you showing them a Savior high and lifted up. Now, I know that wasn't the most explosive and dynamic devotion this morning, but I want you to understand that you have a great opportunity, and use it. Use it, not just to tell them I told you so. Use it to help get them to land, even if it is on a board or a broken piece, even if it doesn't look like we want it to look. Use it to help get them there, and may God's testimony through you shine bright and Him be glorified. And so, if you're not familiar with this chapter, then I encourage you, go back and read today. It won't take you that long. Read Acts chapter 27 and be encouraged. We can't control every situation, but we can control how we respond to every situation. And Paul chose to respond with a godly manner, and I trust that you will too. Well, I hope that you have a wonderful Friday. And if you live in Western North Carolina and you haven't got the milk and bread yet, you're probably not going to get any. No, I'm kidding. I like to joke about that, but I don't know. I don't know what weather's coming our way, but you stay safe and you stay well, and we will talk to you very soon. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.